The first bullet punched through Silas Brennan's hat at 6:14 in the morning. The second killed the horse beneath him. The third one changed everything. Silas hit the ground rolling, instinct taking over before thought could catch up. 20 years since the war ended, but his body still remembered. Dust exploded around him as more shots cracked through the dawn air. He scrambled behind a limestone outcrop, pressing his back against cold rock, while his heart pounded against his ribs. Two shooters, maybe three. Up on the ridge to his east, silhouettes barely visible against the pale morning sky. He drew his Colt Peacemaker and counted his breaths, slowed them down. A man who panicked was a man who died, and Silas Brennan had no intention of dying today. Not with two children waiting for him back home. Another shot ricocheted off the rock inches from his head. He caught a muzzle flash, marked the position, and waited. 3 seconds. 4. The shooter's head appeared above a boulder, looking for a better angle. Silas fired once. The man tumbled backward and disappeared. His partner broke cover immediately, running for the horses tied in the mesquite below. Silas let him go. 1 bullet spent, 5 remaining. He would need them all. He stayed behind the rock for 10 full minutes, listening to the wind and the distant call of a hawk. When he finally emerged, his bay mare lay still in the dust, blood pooling beneath her neck. Good horse, faithful horse. He had raised her from a foal. Silas knelt beside her and closed her eyes, then checked his own wounds. The first shot had grazed his shoulder, leaving a burning line across his upper arm. Blood had soaked through his shirt, but the bone was intact. He would live. The dead shooter lay face down on the ridge, a young man with a scraggly beard and cheap boots. Silas recognized the brand on his gun belt. Circle G, Hank Greer's outfit. So it had finally come to this. Silas started walking. 3 miles back to the ranch, under a sun that promised no mercy. Each step drove the truth deeper into his bones. This was not random. This was not cattle rustlers looking for easy pickings. This was personal, and it was just beginning. The Brennan Ranch sprawled across 2,000 acres of Texas hill country. Good grazing land, with one feature that made it worth killing for. Dry Creek Spring fed an underground aquifer that never failed, not even in the worst droughts. The only reliable water source within 20 miles. Silas had built everything around that spring. 400 head of cattle, a solid house with thick oak walls, corrals, a barn, a bunkhouse for his hands, a life carved out of wilderness through 20 years of sweat and blood and stubborn will, and a grave on the hill where Eleanor rested, watching over it all. Javier Mendoza met him at the gate, the old vaquero's weathered face creasing with alarm at the sight of blood. His nephew Miguel followed close behind, a 17-year-old with steady hands in his uncle's quiet courage. Both men had worked the ranch for years, and both understood immediately that something had gone terribly wrong. Patron, what happened? Greer's men, 2 of them, out by the creek. You are hurt. I'll live. Where's Tom? Scouting the north pasture. He saw riders yesterday, wanted to check the trails. Silas nodded and kept walking toward the house. His shoulder burned, his legs ached, and a cold weight had settled in his chest. He had known this day would come. Hank Greer had been circling for months, buying up smaller ranches, pushing out homesteaders. The spring was the last piece he needed to control the whole territory. 2 small figures burst from the house and raced across the yard. Emmett reached him first, all skinny limbs and fierce energy, followed closely by Rosie with her tangled, blonde hair flying behind her. Pa, you're bleeding.
You can leave.
I choose to stay.
Silas crouched down, ignoring the pain, and gathered them both against his chest. 6 years old. They smelled like sunshine and the corn cakes Javier had made for breakfast. For one moment, he let himself hold them tight. Just a scratch, he said. Nothing to worry about. Where's your horse? Rosie asked, her blue eyes too sharp for her age. She got hurt. She's resting now. He hated lying to them, but they had lost their mother 2 years ago, watched him carry Eleanor's coffin up the hill while the fever still burned in his own blood. They did not need to know that death had come calling again. Tom Redbird rode in an hour later, his Cherokee features set in grim lines. He had been an Army scout before the railroad work dried up, and there was no better tracker in 3 counties. 8 men, Tom said, dismounting in one fluid motion, camped at Red Mesa since yesterday. Greer is leading them himself. Silas absorbed this information. Red Mesa sat 4 miles northeast, close enough for a quick strike, far enough to avoid casual notice. They are not just passing through. No, I counted supplies for a week, maybe more. They are settling in for a siege. Javier had been listening from the porch, Miguel standing silent beside him. 8 against 4, Patron. The odds are not good. 3, Tom corrected. Wilson quit this morning, rode out before dawn, said he had family business in San Antonio. Family business. The coward's excuse. Silas could not blame the man entirely. Ranch hands signed on for cattle work, not gunfights, but it left them dangerously short. The afternoon brought worse news. Young Charlie Dawson came riding hard from the south pasture, slumped over his saddle horn with blood soaking his shirt. Silas caught him as he fell. Greer's men, Charlie gasped through clenched teeth, jumped me at the fence line, got away, but a coughing fit seized him, and when it passed, his eyes had gone glassy. Tell my ma I'm sorry. He died in Silas's arms before they could move him inside. In Charlie's pocket, Silas found a crumpled note written in a familiar scrawl. Brennan phone. Leave in 3 days or bury your children next to your wife. HG. He read it once, memorizing every word, then fed it to the stove fire. But the threat burned itself into his mind. 3 days, 8 armed men, and 2 children who trusted him to keep them safe. Silas rode into Coldwater Ridge the next morning against Javier's protests and his own better judgment. He needed more guns, and there was only one place to find them. The town had grown since his last visit, a new saloon with painted windows, a bank with iron bars, a telegraph office connecting this frontier outpost to the wider world. Progress, they called it. Silas saw only more ways for trouble to find them. Sheriff Dawkins listened to his story with the particular blankness of a man who had already decided not to help. That's a civil matter, Brennan. Land disputes, water rights, not my jurisdiction. He killed one of my hands, sent men to murder me on my own land. You got witnesses? Proof it was Greer? Silas knew better than to argue. Dawkins had political ambitions. Greer had money. The mathematics were simple. He was walking back to his horse when he heard the commotion from the town square. A crowd had gathered around a wooden platform, the kind used for auction day. But today was not auction day. Today they were selling people. Silas pushed through the crowd and felt his stomach turn. A girl stood on the platform, maybe 18 years old, wearing a faded blue dress that hung loose on her thin frame. Her dark hair was pulled back from a face that showed no tears, no pleading, just a rigid dignity that somehow made the whole scene worse. $200. A thick-set man near the front raised his hand. Silas recognized him immediately. Hank Greer himself, grinning like he had just won a prize at the county fair. $250. Another voice, equally eager. The auctioneer prattled on about the girl's domestic skills, her youth, her health, like he was selling a broodmare, which in the eyes of the law...
I'll be back.
Don't break your promise.
was exactly what he was doing. Debt servitude, they called it. Legal as Sunday church in territories where civilization had not quite taken hold. 300. Greer again, his yellowed teeth showing in a smile that made Silas's skin crawl. The man had a wife back at his ranch. This girl was not meant for housework. The girl's eyes met Silas's across the crowd. No appeal in them, no hope. Just the steady gaze of someone who had already accepted the worst. $400. The words came out of his mouth before he had decided to speak them. The crowd went silent. Even Greer's jaw dropped. 400 going once. The auctioneer recovered quickly, smelling profit. Going twice. Greer's face twisted with rage. Brennan, should have known you would stick your nose in. Going 3 times. Sold to Mr. Brennan. Silas walked forward, pulled out his leather wallet, and counted out more money than he had spent on anything since Eleanor's doctor bills. The auctioneer handed him a piece of paper that supposedly gave him ownership of another human being. He folded it without reading and looked at the girl. Come with me. She climbed down from the platform with careful movements, like someone expecting a blow at any moment. Up close, he could see the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides. This is not finished, Greer said as they passed. 3 days, Brennan. Clock's ticking. Silas did not answer. Some threats deserved only silence. They were 5 miles out of town before the girl spoke. We die. Silas kept his eyes on the road ahead. Why what? Why spend $400 on someone you do not know? What do you expect from me? Fair question. He had been asking himself the same thing since the words left his mouth. The honest answer was complicated. He had seen Greer's face when he bid. He had seen what the man planned for her. And he had seen something in her eyes that reminded him of Eleanor on the day they met. That same stubborn refusal to break. I need someone at the ranch, he said. Someone to help with the house, look after the children when I cannot. What is your name? Clara Whitmore. Can you handle a rifle, Clara Whitmore? She was quiet for a moment, weighing how much to reveal. My father taught me, before the drinking took him, rifle better than pistol. I never got much practice with a handgun. Good enough, because in 3 days, a man named Hank Greer is going to try to take everything I have, including you now that you are under my roof. I have got 4 men counting myself, and one of them is a 17-year-old boy. 8 against 4 are not odds I like. Clara absorbed this without visible reaction. So you bought me to fight. I bought you because Greer wanted you. Everything after that is your choice. You can take a horse and ride out tonight. I will give you supplies, some money. Nobody would blame you. And if I stay, then I teach you to shoot a pistol properly. And when Greer comes, you help us send him to hell. She turned to look at him directly for the first time. Her eyes were brown, flecked with gold, and older than her years. He killed my father. The drinking, the debts. Greer owned the saloon where my father lost everything. He planned this whole thing. Getting me on that platform was no accident. That's so? I did not understand until I saw his face when he was bidding. He knew my name before the auctioneer said it. He had been waiting for this day. Silas filed this information away. Greer collecting grudges, Greer playing long games. It fit with everything he knew about the man. Then I suppose you have your own reasons to stay. Clara faced forward again, her jaw set with new determination. Teach me to shoot the pistol. Emmett and Rosie stood on the porch when they arrived, suspicious and still, like 2 small wolves sizing up an intruder. Behind them, Javier watched with raised eyebrows, and Miguel leaned against the doorframe with quiet curiosity. Who is she? Emmett demanded, his arms crossed. This is Clara. She is going to be staying with us and helping around the house. We buy you. Because I say so. Silas climbed down from the wagon. Now go help Javier with the evening feed. The children did not move. Rosie's eyes fixed on Clara, studying her with that unsettling perception she had inherited from her mother. Can you shoot? Rosie asked. Yes. Can you fight? Clara stepped down from the wagon, moving carefully past the children without crowding them. I have never had to, but I am willing to learn. Something passed between the twins, that silent communication only they shared. Finally,
A surprise attack.
I'll follow closely.
Emmett uncrossed his arms. Pa needs help. We can tell. We heard him talking to Tom last night, Rosie added quietly, about the bad men coming. Silas felt a cold hand grip his heart. They had heard. Of course they had heard. These walls were not thick enough to keep out truth. He knelt down, bringing his eyes level with theirs. Listen to me. Both of you, something bad might happen in the next few days. I am going to do everything I can to stop it. But if things go wrong, I need you to promise me something. What? Emmett's voice was barely a whisper. Under the kitchen floor, there is a cellar. The trapdoor is hidden under the rag rug. If you hear shooting, if anyone tells you to hide, you go down there and you stay there. Do not come out for anyone except me or Javier or Tom. Understand? 2 small heads nodded solemnly. Say it out loud. We understand, Pa. He pulled them close, breathing in their scent, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against his chest. Eleanor had made him promise to protect them with her dying breath. He had sworn it over her grave. Whatever else happened, he would keep that promise. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation and mounting tension. Tom Redbird mapped every approach to the ranch, identified every blind spot, every place where attackers could find cover. Javier sharpened his famous knives and checked ammunition counts twice. Miguel practiced with his shotgun until his shoulder ached from the recoil. Silas reinforced the shutters on the main house and taught Clara to handle a Winchester Model 1873. She learned faster than he expected. By the second afternoon, she could hit a tin can at 50 yards more often than not. Her hands had steadied, her eyes had hardened with purpose. "Breathe out slow," Silas instructed. "Squeeze the trigger, do not pull, let the shot surprise you." Clara fired. The can flew off the fence post and tumbled into the dirt. "Better, much better. It is not enough." She lowered the rifle and met his eyes. "Hitting cans is not the same as hitting men." "No, it is not. But when the time comes, you do not think about it being a man. You think about what happens if you miss. You think about those children hiding in the cellar, counting on you." That night, after the others had gone to bed, Silas found Clara sitting on the porch steps, staring at the vast Texas sky. He had come out for the same reason: too much thinking to allow sleep. "You and Greer," she said without turning around. "There is history between you." He settled onto the step beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "The war. We served in the same Confederate regiment, back when I was young enough to think glory meant something real. Greer had a taste for killing that went beyond duty. Prisoners who should have been exchanged, civilians who got in the way. I reported him to the colonel. He got court-martialed and demoted. He never forgot that humiliation. So this is not just about water. The water is the excuse. The rest is 20 years of hate looking for an outlet." Yet Clara was quiet for a long moment, processing this. "My father talked about the war sometimes. Before the drinking got bad, he never said what he did, but he would wake up screaming. Every night for years. War does that to men. Some drink to forget. Some find other ways to carry it. What is your way?" Silas looked out at the dark shapes of the hills, the endless Texas sky scattered with stars. "Work. This ranch. My children. Giving them something better than what I had. And if Greer takes it all away, then I die trying to stop him. But I do not plan on dying, Miss Whitmore. I have got too much left to live for." The betrayal came on the second night. Tom Redbird had been watching the perimeter when he spotted movement near the south fence. Not Greer's men approaching. One of their own men leaving. Pete Slocum, a hand who had been with the ranch for 2 seasons, riding slow and careful toward Red Mesa. Tom followed at a distance, then circled ahead and waited in the shadows of a dry creek bed. When Pete came through, Tom's knife was already at his throat.
I need a place to belong.
"Then stay here."
Before the man could react. Silas arrived 20 minutes later to find Pete tied to a mesquite tree, sweating despite the cool night air. "Greer is paying you $50, and a promise he will not kill me when he comes." Pete's voice cracked with fear. "I have got a family in Austin, Brennan. A wife, 3 kids. What was I supposed to do?" "What did you tell him?" Just how many guns you have, that you are planning to fight." "What else?" Pete hesitated, his eyes darting away. Tom's knife pressed harder against his neck. "The cellar," Pete blurted out. "I told him about the cellar where you are hiding the children." The world went red at the edges of Silas's vision. He felt his hand moving toward his gun and forced it still. Killing Pete now would not help anything, no matter how much he deserved it. "You are going back to Greer," Silas said, his voice flat and deadly cold. "You are going to tell him I am injured worse than I actually am. Tell him we have only got 2 guns left now, that we are planning to make a run for it at dawn on the 3rd day. Can you do that?" Yes, I can do that." "And Pete, if you think about running instead, about warning him that I know, remember this. Tom here spent 10 years hunting men for bounty across 3 territories. There is nowhere you can hide that he will not find you. Nowhere on this earth. They cut him loose and watched him ride away into the darkness. You think he will deliver the message? Tom asked. Fear is a reliable motivator. He is more scared of us now than he is of Greer. And if Greer does not believe him? Silas checked his Colt, spinning the cylinder out of habit. 6 rounds, all seated properly. Then we fight on his terms instead of ours. Either way, we fight. Dawn broke gray and cold over the ranch. Silas stood at the well, drawing water for the horses, when Tom Redbird came riding hard from the east pasture. The expression on his face said everything before he spoke a word. The well at the north section, Tom said, barely stopping his horse. Poisoned. Dead coyotes floating in the water. Greer's work, done sometime in the night. Silas felt the blood drain from his face. He looked down at the bucket he had just drawn. This well was fed by the same aquifer. Check this water. Check it now. Tom dismounted and examined the bucket closely, then peered down into the well shaft. After a long moment, he shook his head. This one looks clean. He must not have been able to get close enough without being spotted. But the north well supplies the cattle. Without it, the herd will need to drink from the creek. That is a 2-mile drive, twice a day. We cannot defend the ranch and move cattle at the same time. Silas understood immediately what Greer was doing. This was not just about the attack. This was about making them desperate, making them weak, making them make mistakes. How long can we last? 2 days of water in the storage tanks, if we ration carefully. Maybe 3 if we cut the horses to half portions. Javier had joined them, his weathered face grim. He is not coming to fight us, Patron. He is waiting for us to come to him, waiting for thirst to drive us out into the open. Silas stared at the horizon where Red Mesa rose against the pale morning sky. Greer was out there, comfortable in his camp, playing the waiting game. He thought time was on his side. No, Silas said finally, we do not wait. We hit them first, tonight, while they still think we are trapped and desperate. Attack them? Miguel's voice cracked with disbelief. We are 4 against 8, and we would be leaving the ranch undefended. 5 against 8, Clara said. She had approached quietly, the Winchester cradled in her arms. I can shoot well enough now to matter. Silas looked at her, then at his men. If we stay here, Greer controls the timeline. He will wait until we are weak from thirst, then hit at us when we cannot fight back. Our only advantage is that he does not expect us to come to him. He thinks we are scared. He thinks we are beaten. Let him keep thinking that, Tom said slowly, a dangerous smile crossing his face, until we are standing in his camp. They gathered in the kitchen as the sun climbed higher, mapping out the attack on Red Mesa. Silas spread rough drawings on the table while the twins watched from the doorway, their eyes wide. Tom hits their camp first, just after midnight, Silas explained, pointing at the map. He cuts the horses loose, creates confusion. Without their horses, they cannot pursue us if things go wrong. And then, Javier asked, you follow 5 minutes later with fire, hit their supply tent with kerosene, give them something to worry about besides us. When they were running around trying to save their gear, Silas and I take them from the ridge. Clara's voice was steady. She had been listening to the plan, understanding her role. 5 against 8 is still bad odds, Miguel said quietly. Surprise and darkness make up the difference. Greer's men are hired guns, not soldiers. They will panic when their camp is burning and their horses are gone. Silas looked around the table. But someone has to stay here. Someone has to protect the children. All eyes turned to Miguel. The young man swallowed hard but nodded without hesitation. I will stay, Patron. My shotgun will stop anyone who comes through that door. The children go in the cellar before we leave. You guard that trap door with your life. No one goes down there, except family. Understand? Yes, sir, I understand. Silas turned to Emmett and Rosie, still watching from the doorway. Come here, both of you. They approached slowly, their small faces pale with fear they were trying hard to hide. Silas knelt down to their level. Tonight, something important is going to happen. Miguel is going to stay here with you, and you are going to be very brave. Can you do that for me? We are scared, Pa, Rosie whispered. I know, sweetheart. Being scared is okay. It means you are smart enough to understand danger. But remember what I taught you. Stay in the cellar, stay quiet, and trust that I am coming back for you. Emmett's jaw tightened, fighting back tears. What if you do not come back? The question hung in the air like smoke. Silas pulled both children close, holding them tight against his chest. I will come back. I promise you that. Have I ever broken a promise to you? No, Pa. Then trust me one more time. They moved out at sunset, four shadows slipping through the purple dusk toward Red Mesa. Tom went first, silent as smoke, vanishing into the scrubland like he had been born to it. His Cherokee ancestors had hunted these hills long before any white man set foot in Texas, and their skills flowed through his blood. Javier followed with a saddlebag full of kerosene-soaked rags and a pocket full of matches. The old vaquero moved with surprising grace for his age, his famous knives tucked into his belt beside his revolver. Silas and Clara took the long way around, climbing to the ridge that overlooked Rear's camp. The moon was a thin sliver, barely enough light to see by. Perfect conditions for what they had planned. They settled into position behind a tumble of boulders, rifles ready, and waited. Below them, the camp glowed with firelight. Silas counted heads through the darkness. 7 visible, he whispered. One must be on watch somewhere. There, Clara pointed to a shadow moving along the western perimeter. By the big rocks. Good eyes. She was proving more valuable than he had expected. The camp below showed 7 bedrolls arranged around a dying fire. Horses picketed on the far side, at least a dozen of them. Supplies stacked under a canvas lean-to. And sitting apart from the others, near the largest tent, a broad-shouldered figure Silas would recognize anywhere. Hank Greer, drinking coffee and laughing at something one of his men had said. Minutes crawled by like hours. An hour passed, then 2. Then in the darkness beyond the camp, a horse screamed. Tom had started his work. More horses cried out, their picket lines cut, bodies wheeling into the night. Men scrambled from their bedrolls, cursing and shouting in confusion. Someone fired blindly into the dark. The lean-to erupted in flames, Javier's signal. The kerosene caught fast, sending orange light dancing across the camp. Men ran in all directions, some toward the fire trying to save supplies, some toward the fleeing horses, all of them exposed. Silas fired. His first shot caught a man in the chest, dropping him before he could reach his rifle. Clara's Winchester cracked a half-second later, her bullet striking another man's shoulder, spinning him around. Then everything became noise and muzzle flash and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Silas worked the lever, fired, worked it again. Training took over, the muscle memory of 100 battlefields he had tried to forget. He did not think about the men he was shooting. He thought about Emmett and Rosie in the cellar, about the note promising to bury them next to their mother. Clara kept pace beside him, her face pale in the firelight, but her hands steady on the rifle. When her weapon jammed, she cleared it without hesitation and kept firing. Below, Greer was shouting orders, trying to rally his men, but the chaos was too complete. Horses loose and screaming, supplies burning, gunfire coming from an unseen ridge. 3 of his men were down, maybe 4. Another was running for the hills, abandoning the fight. Then Tom Redbird's voice cut through the darkness, sharp with alarm. Silas! The ranch! Someone broke through! He understood immediately. One of Greer's men had slipped away during the confusion, heading for the undefended house, heading for the children. Silas was on his feet and running before the thought fully formed. Clara grabbed his arm. I am coming with you. Tom and Javier can finish this. She was right. He did not argue. They plunged down the ridge toward where they had left their horses tied in a dry wash. Behind them, the gunfire continued, but Silas was no longer listening. All he could see was Rosie's face when she said she was scared. All he could hear was his own promise that he was coming back. The ride back took 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. Their horses' hooves pounded against the hard earth, each stride too slow. The ranch house appeared in the distance, dark and silent. No lanterns, no movement. Either Miguel had kept them hidden or... Silas refused to finish that thought. He dismounted at a run and hit the front door with his shoulder, bursting through into the dark kitchen. Moonlight through the windows showed an overturned chair, A broken dish on the floor. Signs of struggle. Miguel? No answer. Silas crossed to the corner where the trapdoor hid beneath the rag rug, pulled it up with trembling hands. The ladder descended into complete darkness. Emmett? Rosie? Are you down there? A moment of terrible silence. Then a small voice, trembling but alive. Pa! They came up the ladder, clutching each other, tears streaming down their faces. Miguel followed, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead, his shotgun still gripped in white-knuckled hands. A man came, Miguel gasped out. I shot at him but missed. He got through the front door before I could reload. But the children, they were already in the cellar. He searched and searched but could not find the trap door under the rug. He was about to start pulling up floorboards when a floorboard creaked behind them. Silas spun, pushing the children behind him, his Colt coming up in a single fluid motion. Hank Greer stood in the kitchen doorway, revolver leveled at Silas's chest. Blood stained his left sleeve where a bullet had grazed him. His eyes held the wild light of a man with nothing left to lose. End of the line, Brennan. How did you get here? Greer laughed, a sound without humor. While my boys kept you busy at the ridge, I circled around. Always have a backup plan. You taught me that yourself, remember? At Shiloh, when you went behind my back to the colonel, always have a backup plan. Let the children go. This is between us. It was always about them. Oich, Greer's gun hand was steady despite his wound. Take away a man's children. You take away his reason to live. That is what you did to me when you got me court-martialed. Took away my future, my reputation, my honor. 20 years I've been waiting to return the favor. Pa, Emmett whispered from behind him. Stay behind me, both of you. Silas kept his eyes locked on Greer, calculating angles. The man had him dead to rights at this range. Any move would get him killed before he could fire. But Greer was wounded and exhausted. His gun hand trembled slightly, and his focus was entirely on Silas. He did not see Clara step through the back door. She moved like a shadow, the Winchester raised to her shoulder. No hesitation, no warning, no mercy. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. Greer staggered backward, a red bloom spreading across his chest. His revolver fired wild, the bullet burying itself in the ceiling. He tried to raise the gun again, disbelief written across his face. Clara's second shot finished him. He crumpled to the floor and the kitchen went silent, except for the children's quiet sobbing. Silas stood frozen, his own unfired Colt still pointed at empty air. Clara lowered the Winchester slowly. Her hands were shaking now, the aftermath of what she had done finally catching up with her. You hesitated, she said quietly. I did not. Then her knees buckled, and she sat down hard on the kitchen floor, and the night caught up with all of them at once. Dawn found them on the porch, watching the sun rise over hills that finally felt safe. Tom and Javier had ridden in 2 hours earlier, exhausted but whole. Of Greer's 8 men, 4 were dead, 3 wounded and captured, 1 fled into the darkness. The threat was ended. Sheriff Dawkins arrived mid-morning with a deputy and a convenient change of heart now that Greer was no longer a threat. Self-defense, he declared after a brief examination of the scene. Clear case of self-defense. He did not meet Silas's eyes as he said it. The deputy hauled away the surviving attackers. The undertaker came for the bodies. By noon, the only evidence of the battle was the smell of smoke drifting from Red Mesa and the bloodstains slowly drying on the kitchen floor. Silas climbed the hill to Eleanor's grave as the sun reached its peak. He stood there for a long time, his hat in his hands, telling her silently about everything that had happened, about the children's bravery, about Clara's steady aim, about the promise he had managed to keep. When he came back down, Clara was waiting on the porch. You saved my children's lives, he said. You saved mine first, on that auction platform. She looked out at the land, the endless Texas horizon stretching toward forever. I suppose that makes us even. Suppose so. Neither spoke for a moment. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermal currents, hunting for prey. I meant what I said before, Silas continued, about choices. You can go anywhere now. I will give you money, a horse, whatever you need to start over. You do not owe me anything." Clara turned to face him. Something had changed in her eyes over the past 3 days. The hunted look was gone, replaced by something steadier and stronger. "Where would I go? Back to a town that sold me like livestock? To family that does not exist?" She shook her head slowly. "This ranch needs work. Those children need someone to look after them when you are in the fields. And I need—" She paused, searching for the right words. "I need a place to belong. It is not much of a life. Hard work, harder weather, neighbors who will talk because you came from an auction block. Let them talk. I have faced worse than gossip." Silas studied her for a long moment. This girl who had stood on a platform expecting the worst, who had learned to shoot in 2 days, who had killed a man with flinching to protect children she barely knew. "All right then, you stay." "I stay." He offered his hand and she shook it firmly. A deal made between equals, nothing more and nothing less. Whatever else might grow between them would come in its own time, if it came at all. That night after supper and stories and the slow settling of a house returned to peace, Silas sat on the porch one final time. The stars blazed overhead, infinite and eternal. The cattle lowed peacefully in the far pastures. From the bunkhouse, Javier was playing a guitar and singing softly in Spanish, a song about lost love and found redemption. The door creaked open and small feet padded across the wooden boards. Emmett and Rosie appeared on either side of him, still in their night clothes despite the cool air. "Cannot sleep?" "We wanted to make sure you were still here," Rosie said quietly. Silas lifted them both onto his lap, one on each knee. They were getting too big for this, growing faster than he could believe. But not yet. Not quite yet. "I am here. I am not going anywhere." "Promise, promise." Emmett leaned his head against Silas's chest, listening to his father's heartbeat. "Clara said she is staying too." "That is right. Is she going to be our new mother?" The question hung in the night air like wood smoke. Silas thought about Eleanor, about the vows he had made and the grief he still carried, about the way Clara had stood over Greer's body, trembling but unbroken, about all the ways a family could be shattered and slowly rebuilt. "I do not know what she is going to be," he said honestly, "but she is part of us now. That much is certain." Rosie nodded, satisfied with this answer. "Good. I like her. She does not crop back." No, she does not." They sat together in comfortable silence until the children's eyes grew heavy and their breathing slowed. Silas carried them inside one at a time, tucking them gently into their beds. He stood in the doorway watching them sleep, these two small people who were everything good he had ever done in his life. Tomorrow there would be work, fences to repair, cattle to count, a poisoned well to clean, a ranch to rebuild from the chaos of war, explanations to give, rumors to outlast, a future to secure through honest labor. But tonight, just for tonight, Silas Brennan allowed himself to feel something he had not felt in 2 long years. Hope. 3 months later, the first real rain came. It fell soft and steady for 2 days, filling the creek beds and turning the brown hills green. Silas stood on the porch watching it fall, breathing in the smell of wet earth and new beginnings. Beside him, Clara was teaching Rosie to braid leather strips for a new bridle. In the yard below, Emmett was helping Tom Redbird shoe a horse, his small hands surprisingly steady on the tools. "Pa," Emmett called up through the rain, "Tom says I am a natural." Tom is not wrong often. Clara caught his eye and smiled. Something had grown between them in these months, something neither of them had named yet. Trust, certainly. Respect, without question. Perhaps something more, waiting patiently for its time. There was no rush. The ranch was safe. The children were thriving. The water that had nearly cost them everything now flowed clean and cold from the repaired well, nourishing the land that 3 generations of Brennans would eventually call home. The rain fell on, washing away the last traces of blood and fire. And Silas Brennan, for the first time in 20 years, did not dream of war.
The story leaves a profound lesson about courage and the importance of protecting what you love. The man not only fought to protect his land and water resources, but more importantly, to keep his promise to his 2 young children. When cornered, he chose to face the situation instead of running away, because responsibility is sometimes what makes a person stronger than fear. Furthermore, the image of the young woman shows the value of resilience. Despite being pushed into a cruel situation and losing all support, she did not give up, but learned to stand up, train herself, and decide her own destiny. She did not wait for anyone to save her, but became someone who could protect others. Finally, the story reminds us that a roof is not just a place to shelter from the rain and sun, but a place where people are respected and belong. A timely act of kindness can change lives, and hope sometimes begins with not abandoning each other in the midst of storms.